the exam this October, and hopefully the others are going to take the exam in 2025. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So as an experienced coach, I have helped numerous students succeed, and I used to do this in person on one-on-one basis before I made my course. Um, in the earlier days, back in 2019 and 2020, I was actually teaching people on one-on-one basis. Those were some of the friends of friends, and I was teaching them like free of cost, but it actually cost me a lot of time and energy. And hopefully, thankfully, they succeeded. They did pass the exam, but that was actually taking a lot of time on my end and like draining me out of the energy. So that's the reason I've now designed a course, and it is a pre-recorded course, so you don't have to show up at a certain time of the day according to my schedule, and you can actually work with your schedule and use whatever time you are available in to study from the course. This webinar is basically structured around how to gain the strategies for FPGE success and is going to guide you how to pass it in the first attempt. Up till now, every student that I have teached has passed. I think there was one who wasn't able to pass out of like 50, 60 students, but up till now, all of those have passed. So yeah, whenever is Um, you guys, would you mind turning off the mic? First of all, I'm going to go ahead and teach you the three most important mistakes that people end up making while studying for this exam. Number one would be studying the brand names. So the country that I came from, that was Pakistan, right? The brand names were big and huge there. But over there, there was no concept of brand names being more pricey than the generic ones like over here in the US. And what I used to do when I was studying for FPGE is I used to make flashcards of the brand names versus the generic names. And I used to rectify them like crazy. But now when I look back, that was the biggest mistake and the most time consuming mistake I made. You absolutely don't have to worry about the brand names over here, especially when you're studying for FPGE. When you're studying for NAPLEX, that's a different story. But for FPGE, it's a very basic exam. They mostly focus around pharmacology. You don't have to pay any attention to the brand names. They're not going to test you on the brand names. So put that out of the picture, okay? Uh, while over here, generics are more important. So mostly, like people like me, people like you, we are more familiar with generics. Back when I was back in school, they used to teach us generic only. But in Pakistan, brand names are huge. Over here, there is absolutely no concept like that. If you have worked in a pharmacy, you might already know this. If you haven't worked in a pharmacy, I am here telling you, please do not pay attention to the brand names. Number two most important mistake was considering that CPR is a book because on the book it says comprehensive pharmacy review for NAPLEX. So I used to think, why would I be studying from a book that's made for NAPLEX? I'm studying for FPGE. It's a very basic exam. NAPLEX is down the road. It is a book for NAPLEX, but there are certain chapters that describe pharmacology and medicinal chemistry very, very decently. And it can be used for FPGE too. So yes, it is a book for NAPLEX, but it's not like you're not going to study from it if you're studying for FPGE. That was one misconception that I had back in time. And I want you guys to know that beforehand, that do not end up thinking it's a book for Netflix and we absolutely don't need it. Yes, it is a very lengthy book and you don't have to read the entire book for FPGE. And in my course, I've also included what chapters to include, what chapters is super important for FPGE and what chapters you can absolutely ignore for FPGE. You do not have to be going through the entire thing. Don't worry about the quizzes that are there in the CPR book as well. Those quizzes are designed to be somewhat like NAPLEX. FPGE doesn't have quizzes like those, so don't worry about that. Okay. So number one was thinking that brand names are important. Number two is thinking that CPR is a book for pharmacology. CPR is a book for NAPLEX and not for FPGE. And number three would be not reviewing the past papers. So what happens is this is an exam around 200 questions. Out of those, I think 170 questions are not scored. So the ones that are not scored are usually questions that are getting repeated from past papers. And if you have reviewed the past papers, you would know when you're sitting in the exam and a question comes in front of your screen, and it is the one that you have seen somewhere in the past papers, you would know that this is a question that is not scored. I mean, most probably you would have the answer to it and you would be able to answer it in like a swing, but you would know that this is something that's not scored. This is just the way the boards like to test us. This is the way they have structured the exam, but reviewing past papers is super, super important. I know the past papers are not easily available over the internet, but if you don't have your hands on to the past papers, you can go ahead and look for sample questions. They have some sample questions in the FPGE bullet blueprint. I'm also going to share a link with you guys that's going to give, like, I think that those are like 2, 3 sample questions just to give you an idea or familiarize you guys with the kind of questions that are presented in the exam. And for the past papers, I do have past papers in my course. So if anybody who might be interested in joining, you guys are more than welcome to go ahead and look for past papers over there. Okay. So this is a slide that I was just reading out loud to you guys. Next would be how to study for FPGE. So I've talked about this so many times on the channel and I'm going to keep repeating it. It is a very basic exam. It's not as hard as people like to make it or like to brag about it. Trust me, it's very easy. And if you have done your 5 years of doctorate right, you won't even have to study it like from scratch. So focus on pharmacology, strengthen your pharmacology, and like pay attention to pharmacology, all those mechanism of actions, all those pathways. They are super, super important. They might be testing you on the mechanism of action as well, and even if they're not testing you on the mechanism of action, they would be throwing questions on you that would require the knowledge of mechanism of action. So, and for pharmacology, Lippincott, as I've mentioned in other videos as well, and as you might all already know, is super, super important. So make your pharmacology very, very strong. The exam structure is somewhat like just I mentioned, 200 questions. I'm sorry, it was 150 are scored and the others are not scored. So there are 50 questions that are not scored. And as I mentioned in the last slide, those will be the questions that are repeated from past papers. So reviewing past papers is super, super important. Keep in mind that there are going to be 200 questions that the computer is going to throw at you. 150 are going to be scored, and your score should be 75 and above to make you pass the exam. And it's not hard at all if you follow the right guideline, if you do the right things, study properly, study smartly, and not like excessively to make you pass this road. So the topics are basically biomedical sciences, pharmaceutical sciences, pharmaceutical, social behavioral sciences, and clinical sciences. I'm not sure if you guys have reviewed the blueprint already, but there is a blueprint for FPGE that the National Boards of Pharmacy provide. You can go ahead to their website. I think it's navp.com. You click on the FPGE blueprint, and they will be able to tell you all the information. But I can tell you what the exam structure looks like. I have the breakdown right here. So basic biomedical sciences is like 10%. Pharmaceutical sciences, I'll come to it later on in this presentation. It's around 33%. Social, behavioral, administrative pharmacy sciences at 22%, and clinical sciences, which is basically pharmacology right here, forms 35% of this exam. So this is how you know how important pharmacology is. And at the end of this webinar, I'll also be sharing a free PDF of the FPGE exam guideline for anybody who sticks till the end of this webinar. So make sure you do that and you will be able to receive the freebie. I'll also be sharing a free timetable at the end of this webinar. So anybody who sticks till the end of this webinar will be able to receive the timetable. And you are more than welcome to use that timetable according to my schedule, like according to the time limits that I have provided on it, or you can go ahead and edit it to your desire. Okay, so the next slide is recommended study resources. Now, I believe I've spoken a lot about Lippincott pharmacology. It is very important, but I have seen students, I have had friends who are like, hey, why do we have to do Lippincott in general? Like there are other books of pharmacology like Katzing, which is very famous among universities in Pakistan, I believe. I'm not sure about others over here, but Katsung is very famous, and they're like, hey, we have been studying all our lives from Katsung. Why do we have to switch to Lippincott? You don't have to switch to Lippincott. If you are studying from Katsung, you're more than welcome to do it. Lippincott is not the gold standard, but I recommend it to my students who are enrolled in the master class, and even like to my friends, because I have seen everybody who studied from Lippincott pass the exam. I'm not saying that everybody who studied from Lippincott should be passing the exam, but the people that I have seen, they have passed the exam, and that's because Lippincott has pharmacology designed in a very beautiful way. They have everything that you need to know for the exam in the book already. But if you're somebody who has been studying all their lives from Katzing, you're more than welcome to do it. Make sure, just make very, very sure that you are doing the mechanism of actions, you are doing the pathways. Don't go in the teeny tiny details of the side effects and everything. Nobody remembers the side effects either way, but at least remember like some important side effects, not just nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. You know what I mean, right? So pharmacology, very, very important. The second book is APHA. Now, this is a part that most of the people don't know, that APHA is a book that is designed by the boards who actually make the FPGE exam. So if you're somebody who's coming from a background from US, so like we have Renata over here, I think she's working in a pharmacy. She might be able to know the things that others who haven't worked in the US too don't. So stuff like you have to take the ID card for somebody who's been dispensing, who's been getting NyQuil or DayQuil, or stuff like controlled medication, stuff like what should be the protocol for morphine. So stuff like this. This is very, very important to know. And the major part of the exam is pharmacology. The second major part is the pharmacy laws. So you need to be knowing certain things that are there in the APHA book. And if you're somebody who's coming from a non-US background, say you were coming from India, Pakistan, anywhere else in the world, you have to study APHA very, very carefully. It's not a very lengthy book. It's not something that you have to rectify. You just have to skim through it. And it's very easy in my regards. But it's very important to study the entire APHA book. And I think I have emphasized enough saying that this is the book that is made by the boards that make the exam. So you guys should be paying enough attention to APHA. And I want you to be studying Lippincott and APHA side by side. Don't wait for the Lippincott to get over until you come to the APHA part. Number one, you're gonna get bored. Number two, you're not gonna retain anything at the end anyway. And number three, you're going to waste a lot of time. APHA is just like reading a book, and Lippincott is something that you have to memorize and test yourself in. APHA is informational. Lippincott is more of a textbook, if that makes sense. CPR. So like I mentioned earlier, CPR is not a book for Netflix only. It is going to be used for FPGE, though don't have to memorize or you don't have to read the entire chapters. There are just certain chapters um, that I've explained in my course that are super, super important for FPGE. You don't have to be reading the entire book. Don't worry about the quizzes at the end of each chapter. Those are usually designed for NAPLEX. If you're able to answer them well and good. If you're not, don't worry about it. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes, Hasnan.
I want to ask, the APHA book also have the pharmacology like in Lipin code. It includes mechanism of actions, or it's just law related.
So APHA doesn't have mechanism of actions or anything, right? APHA is a pharmacy ethics, laws, and practices book. It is more of pharmacy practice related. So
Okay,
if you
thank you.
open the book, you would know, but it's
Okay,
not like mechanism of it's not pharmacology, if that's
okay,
what
thank
your
you.
question was. Okay, so study timetable and strategies. Okay, now coming to the part how to stay focused, and I get so many DMs and messages asking me how do you stay focused? You got two kids. how are you studying? How can we study? We got a full-time job. We have a family to take care of. We're responsible for putting food on the table. I know it's hard, but you need to make certain habits that are going to lead you to success ultimately. And I'm not the one who's saying this. There's so much scientific evidence behind it. First and foremost, create a timetable. And by creating a timetable, I don't mean that use the timetable that I'm giving you or buy my course and get the timetable in the course. No. Create a timetable that fits your availability, that fits your life routines, and then stick to it. So, for example, let's say you made a timetable and you have 4 days for completing the entire cardiovascular system, right? And for the first 2 days, something happened and you got super busy and you just weren't able to study or you just weren't feeling it and you just couldn't study at all, right? Now you have to hold yourself accountable for studying in the last 2 days and completing the entire cardiovascular system in the last 2 days. So in the 4 day time period, whether you weren't able to study in the first 2 days or whether you were studying for the 4 entire days, you have to get done the cardiovascular system in those 4 days by hook or by crook. This is what I mean by accountability. And if you don't end up doing this, honestly, you will be studying on the last night before the exam, scratching your head, panicking like crazy, and that doesn't even help. It's not going to get the job done. You're going to fail the exam eventually. So if you want to follow my timetable, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to provide the timetable at the end of this webinar for people who stick till the end of this webinar. If you want to use that one, use that one. If you want to tweak it to fit your schedule, go ahead and do that. Whatever you do, just make sure you are holding yourself accountable, acting like an adult to study for this exam because you are not going to pass if you plan on studying a few hours here and there in a week. I know it's easy, but it's not like you're gonna study 1 or 2 hour a week and pass this exam. That's a fantasy. That's not going to happen. Number two, using active recall. So this is something that I used to do, and it's backed with so much scientific evidence. And I encourage my students in the master class and my friends who are taking this exam even now, or even my juniors in the university to do, excuse me, is use active recall. What is active recall? Making flashcards and then practicing those flashcards regularly. So let's say you made certain flashcards. Let's say I'm going to use the cardiovascular example, right? So let's say you were studying the cardiovascular chapter. You're going to make flashcards for the important information that you think is going to be tested on the FPGE exam. And then you test yourself. How do you test yourself? You read the question out loud and then you answer it in your head, and then only you look at the answers in the flashcards. That's how you would know. And then you characterize those flashcards based on certain colors. So, like green, I used to use green for the information that I know 100%, yellow for the information that I like certain certainty on. So yellow, and then red for the ones that I just couldn't recall. That would be active recall. That's like testing your brain to go through over the same information again and again, and then testing the amount of information that you're retaining. So, for example, you're reading the entire cardiovascular chapter, right? Now, you read the chapter, you memorized everything that you think is important for this exam, and you have memorized it. Now, what do? You go to the next chapter. No, you don't do that. You close the book. Now you take out a pencil or paper, or if you like to go digital, take out your iPad, take your pencil, and write everything down. Write the stuff that you just memorized from the book with the book closed. Now, when you think you have jotted down all the information on the piece of paper, that's when you go ahead and open the book and see the areas that you're lacking, and then you use a different color to write those areas, and then you review the entire thing again. That's active recall in action. Spaced repetition. What is spaced repetition? The way I like to do it, spaced repetition is basically reviewing the information that we just studied from time to time so that it jots down in our brain. So what I used to do is I'm going to use the same example for cardiovascular system. So let's say I have read the entire cardiovascular system, right? Now, what I'm going to do is write myself certain questions. Questions like, what is the cardiovascular system? What is the heart do? What drugs do we use in the cardiovascular system? like baby type questions, right? And then you review those questions every single night before bedtime. Make it a habit of doing it every single day, and I promise you're not gonna fail. I promise. This is backed by so much scientific evidence that if you do it the way scientists describe it to be done, you're not gonna fail the exam. But the key over here is to stay focused. So that's pretty much about it for the webinar, and hope you learned a lot, got value from it. Everything that I have promised, the timetable, the course outline, and I'm also going to be sharing a free PDF of the APHA book will be provided to everybody who stick till the end of this webinar. So if you got a lot of value out of it, you guys are more than welcome to do this on your own. If you're somebody who wants me to guide you through the way, you guys are more than welcome to join my course. And for everybody who has stick till the end of this webinar till now, you guys are going to get some bonuses that are not usually there in the course. So let me just be giving 10% off exclusively to the people who are on this call right now with me with the bonuses that I promise. Go ahead. So you will be getting access to video modules that are worth over $10,000 to guide you through every aspect of the FPGA exam, whether it's applying for the exam or passing the exam. You will get easy to ready to use PDFs, notes, flashcards that are almost the value of 5,000 because I have designed myself, and it took me like 6 to 7 years to do so. And somebody who has already teased like so many people and they have all passed, you know you're getting a good deal. Then you will get one-on-one question and answers with me via emails. Anything that you need to ask, you are more than welcome to go ahead and do that. And I will be replying to those emails myself. All of these resources, personalized post, everything for $399 plus 10% off for the people who are over here. So $399 minus 10%, I think it's $359. $399 minus 10%. That is, yes, $359 for this.